How are you guys doing? Today is Monday, October 4th, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, now that the 2021 MLB season is over, I'm going to use this episode to look at all of the players in the MLB that were able to hit at least 30 home runs this season. I kind of like 30. 30 is a nice number. I think that if you hit 30 home runs, that's an elite feat in itself, and it's an incredible threshold. And considering that baseball is a sport that's getting more and more competitive, you do see a lot more power hitters. You do see a lot of people hitting for 30 home runs. In the 2021 season, 43 players in the MLB hit at least 30 home runs. And of course, I'm going to go through all of them and just, of course, show some respect and, of course, show some recognition to the players that, of course, put in the hard work season in, year out to put up these numbers to help their teams the best that they can. And, of course, going like the long way. They are hitting against the best pitchers that the MLB has to offer. Over a 162-game season, 30 home runs is a nice, comfortable number. So before I get into the 43 players that would hit at least 30 home runs, taking a look at the honorable mentions, the players that finished with 29 home runs, just one home run short. The player that would finish with 29 home runs in the least amount of games was Brandon Belt. He would do so for the San Francisco Giants. He had 29 home runs and 59 home runs in that span. So he would have a pretty solid game, an interesting season for himself. Sitting alongside him in 135 games, Avisail Garcia, the right fielder for the Milwaukee Brewers, had 29 home runs alongside 86 home runs in 135 games played. Sitting alongside them, Jared Walsh, the all-star first baseman from the Los Angeles Angels, would finish with 29 home runs and 98 RBIs in the 144 games he played for a Los Angeles Angels team that failed to make the playoffs. Juan Soto, the elite right fielder for the Washington Nationals, would finish with 29 home runs and 95 RBIs in 151 games for a Nationals team that failed to make the playoffs. And Bo Bichette would finish with 29 home runs and 102 RBIs in a season that saw the Toronto Blue Jays just miss the playoffs. So that's what those guys are looking like. Now taking a look at what is essentially a 7-way tie for the 38th most home runs in baseball with 30 home runs. First off, the all-star center fielder for the Baltimore Orioles, Cedric Mullins, would finish with 30 home runs and 59 RBIs in 159 games with the Baltimore Orioles team that would fail to make the playoffs. He would also finish with 175 hits, as he would have a good all-around season in addition to his home run hitting. Alongside him, the Atlanta Braves elite second baseman Ozzie Albies would finish with 30 home runs. He would finish with 30 home runs alongside 106 RBIs in 156 games for an Atlanta Braves team that would win the NL East. Additionally, within this group, Jose Abreu, the elite first baseman for the Chicago White Sox and the reigning 2020 American League MVP, he would finish with 30 home runs alongside 117 RBIs for a Chicago White Sox team that won the AL Central. Additionally, in that 7-way tie for 30 home runs, the right fielder for the Houston Astros, Kyle Tucker, will go on, or in the 6-way tie for 38th. Kyle Tucker, the right fielder for the Houston Astros, will finish with 30 home runs alongside 92 RBIs in 140 games for a Houston Astros team that would go on to win the AL West. Also in that tie was Miguel Ceno, the first baseman for the Minnesota Twins. He would finish with 30 home runs and 75 RBIs in a 135-game season where the Minnesota Twins would not make the playoffs. And also in this 6-way tie, who did it in the least amount of games, was Franmil Reyes, the designated hitter for the Cleveland Indians, and who will be known as the Guardians next season. Franmil Reyes finished with 30 home runs and 85 RBIs in 117 matchups. He would have a very solid season for himself, despite batting .254. Miguel Ceno about 223, but going past it, looking at the players that would go on to be a part of the 7-way tie for 31st place in the MLB. Starting with the player that played the most games out of this bunch, it was Paul Goldschmidt. The elite first baseman for the St. Louis Cardinals would finish with 31 home runs and 99 RBIs in 158 matchups, playing for a St. Louis Cardinals team that is still trying to keep their playoff hopes alive. Also in that bunch, who's played one more game than Paul Goldschmidt, Freddie Freeman, the reigning National League MVP and the elite first baseman for the Atlanta Braves, would finish with 31 home runs alongside 83 RBIs, playing 159 games for an Atlanta Braves team that would win the National League East. Continuing to look at other players that would hit incredibly well. Jose Altuve, the elite second baseman for the Houston Astros, would also finish with 31 home runs and 83 RBIs, just like Freddie Freeman. He would play 146 games for the Houston Astros, who would end up winning the American League West, so he had a good game himself. Adolis Garcia, the center fielder for the Texas Rangers, would finish with 31 home runs alongside 90 RBIs while playing for the Texas Rangers, the team that finished with the worst record in the American League West. And then Hunter Renfroe would also we would finish with 31 home runs and 96 RBIs in 144 matchup for the Boston Red Sox, who are going to compete in their single-game elimination matchup against the New York Yankees. Eugenio Suarez, the elite third baseman for the Cincinnati Reds, would finish with 31 home runs and 79 RBIs in 145 games for a Cincinnati Reds team that was the first team on the outside of the wild card picture looking in. He would have a very, very solid season for himself. And also in that 7-way tie was Javier Baez, the elite second baseman for the New York Mets. He would go on to finish with 31 home runs alongside 87 RBIs in 138 matchups for a New York Mets team that would fail to make the playoffs. Sitting ahead of the 7-way tie, it is a 3-way tie for the 28th most home runs in baseball at 32. Teoscar Hernandez from the Toronto Blue Jays would finish with 32 home runs alongside 116 RBIs in 143 games for a Toronto Blue Jays team that failed to make the playoffs this season. Nelson Cruz, the elite designated hitter for the Toronto Blue Jays, was also tied for 28. He finished with 32 home runs alongside 86 RBIs in 140 matchups for the team that finished with the best record in the American League, the Tampa Bay Rays. The player in this tie that played the least amount of games to hit 32 home runs was Kyle Schwarber. Kyle Schwarber, the left fielder for the Boston Red Sox, would finish with 32 home runs and 71 RBIs in 113 matchups, as he will be helping the Boston Red Sox compete in their single-game elimination matchup at home against the New York Yankees, their arch rivals, to compete for their playoff contention. Sitting ahead of them, it is a 5-way tie for the 23rd most home runs in baseball, tied with 33 home runs. Playing for the Atlanta Braves was Austin Riley. He would finish with 33 home runs and 107 RBIs in 60 matchups for the Atlanta Braves that would win the National League East. Sitting alongside him, a player that did it in 109 games, Mike Zenino, the all-star catcher for the Tampa Bay Rays, would finish with 33 home runs and 62 RBIs in 109 games for the AL regular season champs, Tampa Bay Rays. Also looking at the other players that are sitting in that tie, Jorge Polanco, the second baseman for the Minnesota Twins, would finish with 33 home runs and 98 RBIs in 152 games for a Minnesota Twins team that failed to make the playoffs this year. Also sitting tied for 23rd in home runs was Ryan Mountcastle, the rookie first baseman for the Baltimore Orioles. He set a Baltimore Orioles rookie record, I believe. He would finish with 33 home runs alongside 89 RBIs in 144 games played for the Orioles, a team that tied for the worst record in all of baseball with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Sitting tied with them as well was Yordan Alvarez, the designated hitter for the Houston Astros. Yordan Alvarez would finish with 33 home runs and 104 RBIs, he would end up playing 144 games for the Houston Astros, who would finish on top of who would finish as the American League West champs. They're getting ready to face off against the Chicago White Sox going into the playoffs. Sitting ahead of Yordan Alvarez, Ryan Mountcastle, Jorge Polanco, Austin Riley, and not to mention Mike Zenino, there is a three-way tie for the 20th most home runs in baseball at 34. Nolan Aronado, the elite third baseman for the St. Louis Cardinals, would finish with 34 home runs and 105 RBIs and 157 games played for a St. Louis Cardinals team that just qualified for the playoffs. Tyler O'Neill would also tie with his teammate Nolan Arenado as he finished with 34 home runs and 80 RBIs in 138 games played for the St. Louis Cardinals, who are going to play their single-game elimination matchup against the LA Dodgers. Also in this tie is Nick Castellanos, the right fielder for the Cincinnati Reds. He finished with 34 home runs and 100 home runs in 138 games played, which if he actually played the full season would average out incredibly well. But regardless, he would do so for a Cincinnati Reds team that will be the first team on the outside of the National League playoff picture. Sitting ahead of Arenado, O'Neill, and Castellanos is a three-way tie for the 17th most home runs in baseball, as 19 players in the MLB would finish with at least 35 home runs on the season. Kyle Seager, the third baseman for the Seattle Mariners, is one of the three players in this tie. He finished with 35 home runs and 101 RBIs in 159 games for the Seattle Mariners team that would finish just one game outside of the American League playoff wildcard picture. Also sitting there is Bryce Harper, the elite right fielder for the Philadelphia Phillies, would finish with 35 home runs and 84 home runs in 141 games. He would do so for a Philadelphia Phillies team that finished second in the National League East to the Atlanta Braves. And then also in that tie is Giancarlo Stanton, the elite designated hitter for the New York Yankees. He finished with 35 home runs and 97 RBIs in 139 games played for a New York Yankees team that is going to face off against the Red Sox to keep their playoff hopes alive. Sitting ahead of this three-way tie with 35, there's a three-way tie for 14th in the MLB with 36 home runs. With the most amount of games played in this trio, Jose Ramirez, the elite third baseman for the Cleveland Indians, will go on to finish with 36 home runs and 103 RBIs in 152 games played, playing for a Cleveland Indians team that has just been eliminated from playoff contention. And going into this next matchup, they're going to be known as the Cleveland Guardians. So the first best player of the Guardians era may be more than likely be Jose Ramirez if he stays put. Sitting alongside him, Max Muncy, the all-star first baseman for the Los Angeles Dodgers, is involved in this tie. He would finish with 36 home runs and 94 home runs in a 144-game season for the LA Dodgers, in a season where the Dodgers would finish with the second best record in the NL West, and they are going to fight for their playoff contention against the St. Louis Cardinals tomorrow. And then also in this tie is Joey Vado. Joey Vado finished with 36 home runs and 99 RBIs in 129 games. He would go on to have some historic home runs this season, so of course he would finish. I'm not surprised that he finished with this many home runs. He finished with 129 games played for a Cincinnati Reds team that was maybe 5 or 6 games shy of clinching a playoff spot. Sitting ahead of this three-way tie is Pete Alonso, the elite first baseman for the New York Mets. He would finish 13th in the league in home runs, as he had 37 home runs and 94 RBIs in 152 games played. For the New York Mets, who would not qualify for the playoffs at all. Sitting ahead of them is a three-way tie for 10th in the league in home runs. Rafael Devers, the all-star third baseman for the Boston Red Sox, would finish with 38 home runs and 113 RBIs in 156 games played for a Boston Red Sox team that is going to play the New York Yankees for playoff contention. Also sitting in that tie is Joey Gallo, the left fielder for the New York Yankees, finished with 38 home runs and 77 RBIs in 153 games played. He finished with a 199 batting average. He finished with 38 home runs, a a batting average below 200, and he finished with 99 hits on the season. He didn't even finish with 100 hits this season, but Joey Gallo would tie for 10th in the major leagues in home runs, and he did so in 153 games, and he's still going to be fighting for playoff contention against the Boston Red Sox in Fenway. And also involved in this three-way tie is Adam Duvall. The left fielder for the Atlanta Braves would finish with 38 home runs and 113 RBIs in 146 games for the Atlanta Braves this season, the team that won the National League East. He is still playing baseball as they're going to get ready to face off against the Milwaukee Brewers for their first matchup. Sitting ahead of this three-way tie for 10th in the league, there is a four-way tie for 6th in the league with 39 home runs. The most games out of this bunch was played by Mitch Haniger, the right fielder for the Seattle Mariners. He finished with 39 home runs and 100 RBIs in 157 games for a Mariners team that just missed the cut for the playoffs. Matt Olson, the first baseman for the Oakland Athletics, would finish with 39 home runs and 111 RBIs, playing 156 games for an Oakland Athletics team that also just missed the cut for the playoffs within the last week or two. Also in that stretch, Brandon Lau, the second baseman for the Tampa Bay Rays, would finish with 39 home runs and 99 RBIs in 149 games, as he would finish with the most home runs on the best team in the American League this season. And also in that tie, who had the least amount of games played within that stretch, is Aaron Judge. The elite right fielder for the New York Yankees would finish with 39 home runs and 98 RBIs in 148 games. As he played for the New York Yankees, as they are fighting for their playoff lives in their one-game elimination matchup against Boston coming up tomorrow. Taking a look at the only player that's sitting in 5th in the MLB in home runs this season, it was Fernando Tatis Jr. The elite shortstop for the San Diego Padres would finish with 42 home runs and 97 RBIs in 130 games for a San Diego Padres team that failed to make the playoffs this season. Sitting ahead of Fernando Tatis in 4th place is Marcus Simeon, the all-star second baseman for the Toronto Blue Jays. He finished with 45 home runs and 102 RBIs and will be a historic home runs hitting season by a second baseman in the MLB. He would play all 162 games. He would be the only player that had at least 30 home runs that played all 162 games, I believe, as Whit Merrifield did not. So big season for Marcus Simeon. Sitting ahead of him in 3rd place in the MLB was Shohei Ohtani. The all-star designated hitter for the Los Angeles Angels would finish with 46 home runs and 100 RBIs in 155 games played for a Los Angeles Angels team that did not make the playoffs this year. And sitting ahead of Shohei Ohtani, sharing the crown for the most home runs in baseball, you see Vladimir Guerrero Jr., the elite first baseman for the Toronto Blue Jays. He finished with 48 home runs and 111 RBIs, and tied with him is Salvador Perez, the elite catcher for the Kansas City Royals, who also played 161 games this season. He would finish with 48 home runs as well as Vladimir Guerrero, but he would finish with the RBI title as well, as he would finish with 121 RBIs on the season. Those are all 43 of the players in the MLB that have finished with at least 30 home runs this season. And because of their incredible hard work, I do think that they should be recognized. And this episode is my way of giving the players their roses immediately after the show. That's what I'm saying. It's been an amazing show. And now only 10 teams are remaining in the MLB, as 4 teams are fighting for their playoff lives at this very moment. With that said, I want to thank everybody for listening to this piece. I want to thank the MLB.com website for giving me all the facts and figures that I need in order to do this episode. And of course, I want to apologize if I butchered any of the names. I do plan on getting them right. And following this Home Run Kings episode, I am going to do a episode for the players that would finish with at least 100 runs, that finish with at least 100 RBIs on the season as well, because, of course, the player that drive in runs and the players that score runs, of course, should be recognized as well. With that said, I want to thank everybody for listening to all 20 minutes of this piece. I really do hope all is well, and I will catch everyone with another episode right after this. And I want to thank everyone for listening. Thanks for all the patience. There's a lot of end season stuff, but of course, I enjoy being there for the ride. I'll catch you with more after this. Thanks for listening to my piece, and peace out. I'll catch you with more.